to go beyond their normal limitations. That's terrific. However, the problem with Rahu is it also looks and says, I want this, but I'm not aware of what the cost will be. I'm not aware of what I'll have to give up or I'll have to compromise. Let me just close this for a second. In order to achieve what I want. So that's something to keep in the back of your minds, especially for those born or with significant planets between September 15th, October 15th, December 15th, January 15th, April 15th, May, June 15th to July 15th. All those individuals are going to feel a lot of push to make changes, to make big changes, and to take on lots of different tasks. The other signs will be affected in different ways. So individuals born a little bit later than that, let's say in the 30-day period after that, will feel an urge to change religion or change belief systems. People born in the 30-day period after that will feel a desire to either be more secluded or be more outgoing, to change their financial situation. So you'll have all these pushes and pulls over the next 2 months or so. And it'll be good. You'll actually get opportunities to do these things over the next 2 months. And you should try them out and measure them out. But don't make any major commitments or major changes unless you're in a completely horrible situation. Don't make any major commitments or major changes at least until September, when Jupiter goes direct. Because Jupiter will at least, even though the pull of ambition will be very strong, Jupiter can at least open doorways for you. It's retrograde right now, so again, Jupiter retrograde tends to overestimate our abilities. It tends to, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with pushing yourself. That's not the idea. The idea is to say, okay, I want to do this. You don't even have to think about how you're doing it. We're talking about a manifesting universe. You can say, I want to do this, but you want to wait until you have the maximum push of luck behind you, and good luck. So this will be around the end of August. Jupiter turns stationary direct. It's a large push of luck for people. It's a large element of activity where they can actually make changes and make them stick. So you don't want to be saying to yourself, well, I want to get out of this marriage, and then like 3 months later you're back in it again because you couldn't make it on your own. You don't want to end up quitting a job and saying, oh geez, why did I do that? I can't find anything else that I like better, because for about another year, Rahu's going to stay in that sign. And what that means is, if you make a change within that year, some of it will be good. If it's education, that's fine. Education is something you never lose. You always gain the benefit of. But if it's to change the circumstance or change your residence or something like that, it's a very difficult time to do it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a very difficult time to do it. So caution is advised. The other thing to keep in mind is this eclipse coming up July 2nd affects pretty much the entire chart. Now again, we are not talking about major catastrophe here. I have to stress that. I get very upset with my colleagues when they start talking about these kinds of things. But you will see over the next, so rest assured, we're not seeing, some governments will lose positions. You know, certain countries are very vulnerable right now. The United States is really not one of them. But certain countries are very vulnerable right now. And you'll see a lot of conflict or a lot of protest in different countries over the next couple of months. That's to be expected. You will see some governments lose power. And I won't go into the details because I feel like some of that information is information that I'm privy to, and not a lot of other astrologers are. And it's not that I'm being exclusive, and I know more than they do, but basically I know the charts. But Europe's going to have a lot of difficulties. Countries in the Middle East are going to have a lot of difficulties. China and even India to a certain extent will have a lot of difficulties. And I think you'll also see some problems coming up in certain parts of Brazil, because Brazil's having some difficult astrocartography lines. Doesn't mean other countries are excluded. These are just sensitive points in the chart right now. The major things to keep in mind, though, over the next few months is, as frustrating as it may be to stay still, the best thing over the next few months, unless you're absolutely forced into a position, is to stay still and to plan for when you are making your changes. It isn't going to be easy. Emotionally, I know it's not going to be easy for a lot of people, because at least twice a month, the moon is going to go through Gemini and Sagittarius. That'll make you feel very restless, very agitated, feel like, as a matter of fact, 3 times a month you're going to be having that feeling. And basically just try to ride through it. See an astrologer. I do readings for people. I don't want to advertise. I do readings for people at Crystal Expectations, but you can see other astrologers and they can guide you as well. And I think the main thing that I'm encouraging you to do, especially when you're looking at the next few months, is not to make rash changes. If you're forced into them, you're forced into them. I mean, these things happen. But I have seen so many people over the past year, really, just make big changes in their life, and the dust is still settling from those big changes. Some of the changes have been very, very positive, but on the downside, in terms of security, in terms of finances, and in terms of being able to afford things, they have been very difficult for people. So I think, and it hasn't been without an emotional cost as well. So it doesn't mean the change didn't need to take place. It just means that whenever you're in what I would call a transition period, some transitions go smoothly. This is not one of them. Okay? So this transition period will be easy at first if you make the first steps in it. Down the road, you'll see some obstacles. Further down the road, you'll see some obstacles. Then about a year from now, you'll come out and you say to yourself, what was I so worried about? I'm fine. But just be aware that when you make these big transitions over the next few years, over the next year or so, Saturn's involved. Saturn sort of ties people down. They sort of like limit the freedom they can have. And it's in Sagittarius, which is a sign connected with travel, but also with higher knowledge. So all these changes that you're making, you're trying to make changes to an established order, which is fine. I actually have nothing against that. I go way back, and I think that's healthy. I actually think that if you have changes to established systems, that's healthy. But I also want to minimize the panic that I've seen and the frustration and the anxiety I've seen people exhibiting over the past few months, especially in the build-up to these changes, and just say, number one, it's about to get a bit easier by the end of the summer, a lot easier by next year, tons easier. So don't worry about what's happening. The eclipse will probably bother people born between August 15th and September 15th, and to a lesser extent, people born between January 15th and February 15th, but it will actually expose what I would call false ideals or things that they've been clinging to that they thought would benefit them but really aren't. So it's a good time to be alive. It's a good time to be here. It's an exciting time, okay? And I know there's an old Chinese curse that says, may you be born in exciting times, but we're actually in a time of really great transition for both the country and the world. And this is not going to be a destructive transition. This is going to be a relatively smooth one. Saturn and Mars fight each other. They have different qualities. Mars wants things done fast, yesterday if possible. Saturn says, what's the rush? You have your entire life. The problem with Saturn is, yes, you have your entire life, but Saturn will keep saying you have your entire life until you're in your 90s, and then your entire life is gone. So it needs that nudge from Mars to make change happen. But right now, and Mars will always defeat Saturn. I don't care what any astrologer says out there. It's been my experience that action will always defeat entropy. But do it wisely, do it slowly, do it confidently. There's no need to panic, and there's no need to be afraid. Okay? So again, this isn't just to reassure you, it's really what's happening astrologically. Okay? So with that having been said, exciting times coming up. Maybe too exciting for some people, but exciting times are coming up, and actually beneficent changes are coming. So stay centered, stay grounded, stay calm. Good things are coming. Namaste.